Rotary reputation, the reputation that Rotary has out in the community, and the relationships with these charities and with these organizations. So that's the type of stewardship that we're talking about. We're going to prepare you to implement those memorandums of understanding, because yes, it is important to sign and submit those, but you need to review them as well and know what you're signing, what you're agreeing to. We will qualify clubs. You will be qualified to receive grant funds once you do that. And then we're going to also cover how to plan for and apply for matching grants through our district committee, because that is one of the steps. In District 6630, our grant cycle is slightly different. We move the decision-making power and responsibility from Rotary International and move it down to the club and district levels. That allows you and your leadership at a club level to decide what types of projects you want to get involved with in your community. And then it also moves that oversight and stewardship guidance from Rotary International down to the district level. So every step of the way, we will help you get your projects input into Club Runner, and then also make sure that you're following all of the steps needed to have a successful project. We'll talk about two types of grants today: district grants and global grants. All of them involve community projects, often humanitarian projects. On the global level, they could include scholarships and vocational training teams. In fact, we have two of those exact global grants in the works right now in Cleveland and in Solon. Grant management. Why do we make such a big deal out of you attending the grant management seminar? And we just want to make sure that the projects are properly financially controlled, that they adhere to the standards that are outlined in those MOUs, those that were put forth by Rotary International. We want to make sure that the money that's provided, both invested from your club and the district, meet the needs of the beneficiaries. That's why asking what is needed in your community versus telling how you can help is such a better practice. We want to make sure that you fulfill the objectives that you set out to fulfill, and then again, to safeguard those Rotary funds. We'll have several sections today. I'm going to talk about qualifications and designing a project. And then Dale is going to cover applying for and implementing a grant. And then Sean is going to cover oversight and reporting. And she also will wrap us up with some common mistakes that are made to hopefully help you avoid those mistakes. Okay, moving right along, section 1, qualification. Again, encourage you to write your questions down or throw them in the chat, and we will get to them. I have already mentioned a few of these, and we'll continue to mention them. Repetition is a great way to learn. So two club members attending the grant management seminar. So if you don't have two on today, hopefully, Joseph and I were talking about this earlier, someone from your club attended one of the other two seminars that we have been offering throughout February. Signing that MOU and the MOU addendum. I'll repeat, President-elect 2023 and President-elect 2024 are who signs those MOUs. Also, there's a spot for both the grant attendees, at least two. You may have had more, but at least two need to sign, showing that they attended that grant management seminar. You need to be current on Rotary International and district dues. Also current on any existing district or global grant you may have outstanding. That's an important one. I've already mentioned stewardship a couple of times, and those reports are what allows us to stay on top of the grant funds that have been distributed. So if you know that your club has an outstanding grant, make sure that your reporting is up to date. Sean's going to go into that in a lot more detail. Your club's average per capita contribution to the Rotary International Annual Fund needs to be at $40, and that's for the 22-23 Rotary year to be qualified for this upcoming grant cycle, which is 23-24. I know at the end, if you've got questions about that, we can cover that, because last seminar, a couple people wondered, how do I know? How will I know if our club is up to date? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then finally, if you're a president-elect who's on today, or if not, let your president-elect know. There's a spot that their foundation goal must be entered in the Goal Center in Rotary Club Central, and they will learn about that in their PETS training. If not, they can reach out to one of the district leaders, either Governor Dave Jones or maybe Governor-elect Julie Brandel. So maintaining qualifications, kind of knowing and understanding what is required of you. So when you attend these seminars and when you submit your MOUs, that means you're qualified for an entire year. But it's not enough just to sign. Please read through and understand what's being asked of you. Read, understand, and follow the terms within those MOUs. And it's really just to make sure that your club, everyone in your club, not just you, but everyone within your club understands. You'll want every member to understand you have a responsibility with the projects and with the funding that you've received. And then lastly, you'll want to ensure that stewardship measures and that all proper grant procedures are followed. And we're going to cover that in a little bit, but it's to make sure that funds are used. And that doesn't mean by any means that a club is going to purposely misuse funds, but things happen. COVID taught us that sometimes best laid plans cannot be carried out. And so if it turns out that funds that were going to be used for something cannot be used in that manner, is there a way to shift and pivot and come back to the grant committee and maybe come up with the next best thing? Or in some cases, clubs have to return funding because it's just impossible. So that's what we mean by misuse of funds. We just want to make sure that if funds aren't used as intended, that they're approved or sent back. I mentioned qualification, it's for 1 year. Once a club successfully completes the requirements, you are good to go until this time next year. Club leadership and members need to understand that the club is responsible. Don't work in a vacuum. Make sure that the rest of your club knows and understands, because you're going to need their passion and support behind you. Clubs need to disclose if there is a conflict of interest. Sometimes clubs may think, oh gosh, if there's a conflict, we can't move forward. But there are ways to deal with it. And examples of conflicts, perhaps a member of your club also serves as on the board of directors for the receiving organization. That's okay. It needs to be disclosed, and there's a sample letter we can give for you for that. Other examples of conflict of interest might be using a Rotarian as a vendor. Again, it's okay, but you need to properly disclose that. To this side, so I won't repeat myself. Moving on to designing a project, the fun part. So Rotary is dedicated to the causes that build relationships, improve lives, and create a better world, both here locally and globally. Each area of focus has specially designed goals that are intended to design projects that meet real community needs. I think a club would be pretty hard pressed to come up with a project that does not fit into one of these 7 areas of focus. So they are peace and conflict resolution, supporting the environment, which is the newest one. I love this one because living in Northeast Ohio, we have so many terrific parks and nature preserves and recreational areas that we as Rotarians could help. There's water and sanitation, maternal and child health, disease prevention and treatment, basic education and literacy, and then economic and community development. So you can see pretty wide array of areas that you could focus on with your projects. We talked about meeting the needs of the community. So beneficiaries are so much more likely to support and participate in projects that meet their needs as a community, and that have a sustainable outcome. You want your project to be able to continue to impact long after Rotarians have finalized the project. And we'll talk about community needs a little bit more, but we've got great examples in our district of clubs that have gone out and asked that question. What can we do? How can we help? Oftentimes Rotarians will partner with the community and organizations to bring in technical expertise, but please remember that Rotarians must be an active part of the projects that you choose. And Sean will talk about more of that in a bit, but that's one area where sometimes clubs struggle because it's an amazingly worthwhile project, but how are Rotarians actively involved? And working together means more than financial participation. It's boots on the ground. It's getting involved, to get your hands dirty and get, push up your sleeves and get involved. The last two, that projects have to be sustainable and involve a partner. Those are required in global projects. You'll find that it's often also part of a community project, but in the projects that are global, it is a requirement. Rotary International will look for and make sure that that is part of your plan. The needs assessment, that's asking members of your community, how can we strengthen what it is you do for the community? How can we provide greater support and involvement? And again, that's going to lead to sustainability. It's also going to get your Rotarians behind you, because you need to make sure that you have the capacity to do these projects. Make sure that there's enough folks within your Rotary world that know and understand what you're trying to do. Once those needs are identified, your club should consider how are you going to get there? What resources do you need? What skill sets? What's the availability of your club? Do you need to involve a partner? So all of that you want to look at prior to going in and applying within Club Runner, because those questions are asked within the application. The other thing is talk and listen to throughout the project to your community partner, because things may change. Timing is super important, because the timing of our grants, this is sort of you're starting now in February. May is when we start hearing project presentations at the grant committee. Plans are submitted to Rotary International in July and August, and funds really aren't dispersed until September, October. So make sure that your goals as a Rotary club and your recipients' goals, that the timing aligns. That's really, really important. So how do we get this done? Best practices says form a committee, and it doesn't have to be huge. We know that all of your clubs are different sizes and you have different levels of involvement. 3 is best practices. If you can do that, spread the work around. As I mentioned, Rotarians do need to manage all projects and be actively involved. So having someone to help you is a good thing. Roles and responsibilities could be divided up. Make sure everybody's assigned something different so that you're able to carry out your implementation plan. Those implementation plans, again, should include steps to get you from A to Z, timing, what resources you need, because you'll need those to develop and establish your budget. Figure out if there's any liability involved. Is your club at risk by going into this particular project? And then you'll want to, and I'll only mention this quickly because Sean's going to talk about it more, but you do have to have a document retention plan. Save everything that goes into planning and carrying out your project, because those will be needed when you do your reporting for Rotary International. Creating that budget, it needs to be realistic. So what are all of the things that you need to carry out your project? If you're going to have expenses that go beyond what the club and the district are going to be paying for, you need to find out how to pay for anything over and above. That doesn't happen a lot, but some of the really larger projects that may happen. When you're choosing suppliers, get 3 bids. You'll want to get reasonable pricing, just like you do for your own purchases. So best practices again is 3, and save those. Choose the price and the quality that best meets your needs, but save those to show that you were good stewards and you did go out and get the best pricing. And we already talked about disclosing conflicts of interest. Lastly, you want to make sure that you're setting goals. You want to be able to see how we do at the end of all of this. So make sure that you have a good starting place, have measurable goals. you want a baseline. So before your project, what were the statistics regarding, I'll use one of Akron's projects. We prepared meals for Ronald McDonald House. Our goal was we wanted to be able to provide 50 meals on a quarterly basis. It actually jumped up and we ended up doing close to 200 meals by the end. So just be able to have a start and a finish and be able to show how your project has impacted the community in a favorable way. How sustainable is your project once you walk away, once Rotary is finished? If it's providing equipment to a playground, how will that equipment be maintained? That's the types of things. Your measurements could be qualitative or quantitative. So improving life for seniors at a senior center, that's a goal. Improving quality of life is a qualitative goal. And quantitative is the example I gave with providing the 50 meals. But that baseline is going to be important when you do your final report for the Rotary International that Sean will talk about next. Or no, Sean's not quite next, but next is Dale, and I will turn it over to Dale Smith, who's going to talk about applying for and implementing a grant. And Dale, you'll just need to tell me when you're ready for me to click.
All right, I'm ready. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go through how to apply for the grants. First of all, we'll talk mostly about here at the start about district grants, but for district grants, and you'll hear me repeat this date several times, you'll need to enter an inquiry into the grant module that you'll see later by May 15th. And that is a very simple inquiry. It's just 1 or 2 sentences on what you want to do for your project and submit that. For global grants, there is no inquiry deadline. It's a rolling application. Global grants are done on a rolling basis. So there is not that initial deadline. In either case, the first step to obtaining a grant is to submit the grant inquiry in Club Runner. I'm ready, Sandy. Again, for managing our grants, we have an online application process that's run through Club Runner. And the inquiry deadline is May 15th. And again, I'll repeat that again. The inquiry deadline is May 15th, and we'll explain why that is in a slide or two. Your district grant must meet the Rotary Foundation fundability criteria. It must support a Rotary Club project. It must have direct Rotarian participation. And by that, we mean we want folks to be getting their hands dirty. We want Rotarians to work on the project, not just write a check. The minimum total budget for a project is $1,000, which means that the club would need to come up with the $500, and there would be a $500 match from the district for that project. And then also the district will have to confirm that the club is qualified and meets the qualifications that Sandy just reviewed. Anytime, Sandy?
I'm trying. It is the day for, okay.
There we go. For district grants, the district currently matches club dollars, dollar per dollar, which is based on our funds availability between $500 up to $2,500 when that's available. Keep in mind that the district grant dollars that we're using for these are the result of your donations to the Rotary Foundation 3 years prior. And 25% of the total that our district gave to the Rotary Foundation 3 years ago will become eligible for grants next year. So your giving determines how much is available for those grants. And right now, because of the number of clubs that have been interested in the grants recently, that's $2,500 for a total project of $5,000. Now, that does not mean that your project cannot be more than that. It's just $2,500 is the maximum that the district will be able to match. Per the Rotary Foundation policy, funds cannot be raised from beneficiaries or cooperating organizations in exchange from the grant. The club needs to raise those funds themselves. And lastly, the funds for the grant cannot come from other grants. This needs to be a standalone project. District grants, we want your submission of inquiries as soon as possible. Anytime after you've signed the MOUs that Sandy discussed earlier, you can turn in the grant inquiry. And again, the deadline for the grant inquiry is May 15th. Now, one change that we've got going now is that when you submit your grant inquiry or 1 or 2 sentences in Club Runner on your proposed project, the grant committee will immediately assign a liaison to your club and that project to help you through the remainder of the application process. And we ask that you complete that application prior to the presentation to the grants committee. Application sounds like a lot of work. It is not. It's 6 questions such as what is the project, who is the beneficiary, how will Rotarians participate. It's literally just 6 questions, and you'll see those at the end of the program. In May and June, we ask that you present to the grant committee a very short presentation that describes your projects, and the grant committee will then make a judgment on fundability for the project. All the material, again, must be in your Club Runner application. And again, you'll see that it later in the program, but any quotes you have and other documentation, you can upload that right to Club Runner, just like you would attach a document to an email when you're sending it out. All of that can be right there in Club Runner, easily available at your hands. And yeah, just to answer a question that came in through the chat, thank you. So the monies that we give to the Rotary Foundation, some refer to that as Paul Harris, but the donations that we as a district give are invested by the Rotary Foundation for 3 years, and then the monies are used after that period of 3 years. Half of that money comes back to our district, and of that half is available for these district grants. So the amount that we give determines how much we will get back in terms of a grant. So the funds come back to us. The other half of the district dollars are used for the global grants to match those that we'll talk about in a moment, for Polio Plus and Peace Centers, for example. I hope I answered the question. Thank you very much. And now the reason we want the May 15th deadline and the project presentations in June or May and June is that enables us to submit our spending plan to the Rotary Foundation. We have to submit a spending plan and get that approved before we get the money. And so we will submit that spending plan in as soon as we can, usually in July. And after Rotary approval, the grant committee will take a final vote on projects with completed applications, and which will happen very quickly, because what we want to do, the reason we push to get our spending plan approved as quickly as possible is there are projects that clubs want to complete before the weather turns or before school gets fully underway or right at the beginning of the school year. So the sooner we can get those approved and authorized, the faster that work can go. And once approved, the committee will authorize the disbursement of checks, and only then can your project begin. Your project cannot begin until you receive that final approval in the check. That's one of the requirements that I should have mentioned before, but this has to go for a new project that's not yet begun. Global grants, the process is very, very similar to the district grant process with a couple differences. In addition to that initial grant inquiry that could be done at any time and not specific to the year, there's also an online application process at rotary.org that you'll need to fill out, that you'll need to complete. And our liaison, who will be assigned when you submit your initial inquiry, will assist you with that. And we ask that when you complete that application, that you save a PDF of that and you save it in Club Runner along with other documents that go along with the project. The global grant has to meet the goals of one of our 7 areas of focus. And it's very important that the project be sustainable. And that's one of the requirements that's stronger, much stronger for a global grant than a district grant. We don't want to fund a well in a developing country and then 2 years down the road, a relay fails and there's no method for them to repair the well and the well goes dry or actually can't be used. We want to make sure that once we're done with a project, once it's up and running, that the recipient has the ability to maintain it and keep it working. That's very important, especially for a global grant. The global grant must involve Rotary clubs in 2 districts. One would be one of you, and the other club would be in the district receiving the benefit of the project. A global grant must have a minimum total budget of $30,000, which we'll show you in a moment. That only takes a little over $10,000 from the club to obtain that grant. The district will need to confirm that the club is qualified, same as the district grant, and then the district will assist and confirm the application is fundable. Again, talking about sustainability, when we give a community the skills and knowledge to, we want to give the community the skills and knowledge to maintain project outcomes for the long term, long after the grant funds have been expended. Having trouble there with today. So again, in our district, the minimum budget for a global grant is $30,000. When the funds are available, our district matches your club contributions at 100%, and only District 6630 funds are matched 80% from the World Fund. And before we go to the next slide, I want to answer the question in chat. On Rotary.org, if you're looking for a club in another country, there is a club locator. You can enter the location there and search, and it will come up with clubs in that country. This will be kind of a little bit outside of today's session, but you also want to make sure that the receiving or the other club that you're working with is qualified as well. That can be difficult sometimes. So going through the dollars, if the club raises or comes up with $10,715, our district, from our DDF, that's the district designated funds, those are the monies that come back to the district after 3 years of investment. The district will match that 100%, $10,715, and then the World Fund, the Rotary Foundation, will match 80% of that $10,000 for their match of $8,572, giving you a total project of $30,002. But that was good. So actually, this is where I pass it on to Sean.
It is. I get the fun stuff. So
yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dale. So my name is Sean Gordon, and I'm the grants coordinator, actually the application coordinator. So today, though, I have the pleasure of serving as backup to Katie Yeager, who is our stewardship coordinator, and these are big shoes to fill. So you'll have to bear with me as I do my best through Katie's section. So obviously, as we all know, financial management of your grant is very, very important, just like it is in our personal lives, right? We have checking accounts and we have to manage our what money goes in, what money goes out, and we have to keep the receipts and we have to report that. And, you know, tax time is looming upon us as well. So same thing for your grants. you should keep all of the information that's related. The global grants actually require a separate bank account for all of that to go in and out, right? The district grants, you don't have to, but it is recommended. And then, just make sure you have all the information, you track it all, you have a paper trail, and that you use something that's traceable, right? So checks or bank cards or things like that, that you need to be able to show evidence of the flow of funds, right? Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, document retention. So this one is just as important, right? We talked about making sure you have copies of everything. They can be hard copies in a binder, as you see here, or they can be online digital copies as well. Make a plan, right, for how you're going to retain these documents, who's going to be the point of contact, and who's going to be responsible for uploading all of the information once you get to that part of your grant. As it says here, we are required to retain the copies for a minimum of 5 years. And people come and go, things change. So just make sure you have a process, you have a plan, and you keep track of all of that. So also, we do have to provide the documents for transparency to the project, what we're doing, show the impact, all of that. It's just obviously a really that's the responsibility, right, that we have in working through these grants and the impact that we're having in the community. One thing I would share with you here is that it's fine to redact the accounting numbers on the checks for security or privacy reasons. So don't feel that you have to show everything per se, but you have to have the receipts, and if there are any checks or anything that you'd like to redact for confidentiality purposes, please do. Next slide. Thank you. So why do you need to report? This is really important. Sandy touched upon it earlier in her presentation. Really, it's about the responsibility we have. It's about the partnership we have with our community partners in the responsible, careful implementation of these grants, right? So it's building trust, it's facilitating great communication, showing the impact, which I'm big about impact, so I'll probably say that word 20 times. But I think it's a way that in the community, people know who Rotarians are and they see the good work that we do, right? So as part of that, there is the responsibility to report not only to the Rotary Foundation, but to your clubs and your communities. So obviously verifying that the grants were managed properly, and then providing all kinds of really valuable data. Also evaluation data, right? So you can not only show your successes, but maybe there were some challenges and maybe we need to learn from that so that for future grants, we can apply what we've learned. Next slide. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tricky. But you will have this information, and Katie is phenomenal. She is a stewardship czar when it comes to the reports and the deadlines and the filing, and is everything there. You will also work with your liaison. I would really encourage you to once you apply and you've been approved and you're assigned your liaison, really just make sure you have a comfort level with your liaison in terms of when your reports are due, right? Because the reports are due regardless of whether you do much work, right? So just keep that in mind, that your club must file a report every 6 months, right? An interim type report. And that 6-month timeframe starts from the initial payment date, right? So as soon as you get that check, you've gone through the whole process, you get approval, you get that check. Okay, it's go time, 6 months from there. So you are required to report something, and we're going to show you where. We've got some screenshots of some tabs in Club Runner where we'll show you where you need to implement or enter in rather your reports. And then a final report is due within 60 days of the project's completion. So the final report, just to make sure everyone understands, includes all receipts, invoices, bank statements, cancel checks, everything, right, that you're going to implement into the Club Runner grants module. And this is specific to the district grant reports. The global grants have just a little bit of a different approach here. So So hopefully this is good with you. Let me just check real quick and make sure that I covered all the important points here. Like I said, this is Katie's area of expertise, but I think it's pretty black and white. It's just a matter of remembering, right, that you have to do that. So a question from Tom. Is there a deadline of when the project must be completed by? That's an excellent question, Tom. And you know, Dale may be better to answer this for you.
I
Sandy?
can take that one. Yeah, I can take that one from personal experience with
Sure.
Akron. So there is no hard and pressed rule for when a project has to end. Probably the most important takeaway is even if your project is taking a year and a half, every 6 months you go in, and Katie said, or Sean said, we're going to show you where that goes. But you would say, you know, on project ongoing, delayed due to weather, or in my case, delayed due to COVID. But as long as you are reporting interim reports every 6 months and letting the grant committee know and the district know why there's a delay or why it isn't finished, that's fine. Now it'll start, we're going to start writing you when it gets to be about 4 or 5 years. This just happened. So Akron got a grant. I mentioned the Ronald McDonald House, but then COVID hit and we could not physically go into their facilities to provide food. But we didn't want to abandon the project. So, you know, almost 24 months later, we started back, and it did take four years to finalize. Now, you know, district got a little bit antsy saying, come on, let's wrap this up. But it mostly, you know, everyone on district understands that, you know, projects can't be tied up in a nice 12-month bow. We wish it could, but so hopefully that answers the question. If your project goes beyond a year, just make sure you're up to date on those interim, and it won't impact you being able to get a grant for the next year, as long as you're up to date on your interim reports.
Thank you, Sandy. That's great. So Tom, there's a downside to an extended project, right? Because you have to remember to do your report every 6 months. So you might just want to get it done. Just one more thing here to point out is just sort of a reminder that it is required that you do the report every 6 months, and the report, actually the date it's due is 6 months from the initial payment date. Okay, that trips people up just a little bit, but and you'll see as soon as we jump into the next couple slides how in the Club Runner Grants module there's a separate tab, and you can go in. There are preloaded questions. You don't necessarily have to, for the interim reports, you don't necessarily have to answer those preloaded questions exactly, but for the final report you will. And we can go ahead and advance the slide if you'd like. Thank you. Here we go. So this is the section where your reports are entered into the individual project report tab. And here the questions are preloaded. The advice here is for you to, every 6 months when you go in to enter your report, enter it in a different color of font and be sure to date it, right? So here are the preloaded questions. Just below that, you'll see number 1, describe the project. Number 2, how many people benefited, whatever. But on top, you'll see these are the interim reports, and you see how they're in different colored font and different dates, right? And the date is critical. The date is the only way Katie knows if it's within that 6-month requirement period, okay? And your liaison can help you with this. Please rely on your liaison. And then I would like to share on the documents tab, this is where you would go to upload all of the information that you have at the end of your project, and when you go to submit the final report. Okay, hopefully that's pretty clear for you.
And we're going to go live at the end.
Okay,
we're going to
good.
jump into Club Runner and just toggle back between these tabs.
Okay, great. Super. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, global grants. What's a little bit different about global grants is that the club must file a report every 12 months from the initial payment date at the Rotary.org website, and every 6 months in Club Runner. Okay, so those of you considering a global project, the reporting requirements are just a little bit different. And then the final report has to be filed within 60 days of the project's completion, which is the same, right, at the Rotary.org website. with all the copies, the receipts, bank statements, everything, just as you would for a district grant. But then a PDF copy of the Rotary.org report must be uploaded to the Club Runner Grants module. So it's a little bit of an extra step there at the end. Okay, so it's just a little bit different, but pretty similar too. All right, so one more slide there. So what's included in your report, and this is for any report, not just entirely, not just the global grant, but how partners were involved, the type of activity, evaluation of the project goals, how the focus goals were met, how funds were spent, and then the number of beneficiaries served and how they benefited. And here's where we'd really like to encourage you to show the creativity and the passion and the impact of the project. So upload photos. If you have a story about the project that is something that would really show the meaning and the impact of it, be sure to include that. If you have testimonials of program participants, for example, you have feedback from the community, please include all of that, because that's the story of the grant and the project and the success, right? And we want to celebrate your success, and we want to show that. So that's my section for Katie. Hopefully I did okay filling those big shoes. But if there are any other questions and follow-up, obviously all of us are here to help. Katie is the content expert in this particular area, and she's really good at answering the questions. And your liaison, again, is going to be really critical in this part of the process. So please rely on that person. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. You did wonderful. Dale, we did not talk about this, but this summary or review Larry had done, but I don't know if he asked you to do that. So I can do it if you'd like. It's literally just reading the review.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay, so folks, we're going to quickly review, and then we want to be able to take time for Q&A, but even more importantly, to jump in live and show you what to expect when you get into Club Runner. And then Sean's also going to cover a couple of common mistakes. So quickly, step one, become qualified. You're doing that today by attending this grants management seminar with a friend, or that friend has already attended. Complete your MOUs by getting those signed by president-elects and at least two members of your club who attended grant committees. Your president-elect will enter their foundation goals into Rotary Club Central, and then your per capita giving to the Rotary Foundation goal of $40 per capita needs to be met. Last Zoom meeting, we had the question, how do I know? How do I know if my club has met that goal? We're going to add a step district-wide this year where in plenty of time, I think 30 or 45 days prior to the deadline, which I believe is June 30th, July 1st, we're going to go in and double check and make sure that where your club's at on that, and let your club leadership know, so that if there's an issue, you have enough time to correct that, because that will disqualify your club if your club hasn't, and it's per capita, so average per capita of giving. So we're going to give you a little heads up on that one. Step two is your actual applying. Dale reminded you that you need to submit that inquiry by May 15th, and we're going to show you where that goes in Club Runner. I will assign you a liaison as soon as that inquiry is submitted. Again, that person just helps you through the process, answers questions, and occasionally writes you if you need to get an interim report in. You'll schedule your presentation to the grant committee. We meet on the first Monday of the month, and we would like those presentations in May and June. The grant committee will determine if the project meets fundability requirements, and the next day I let clubs know. If there's an issue, we will work with you quite a bit to have you revamp so that we can get it qualified. It's usually how our Rotarians going to be involved, actively involved. Step three, following notification that your grant project's been approved, that's when we go and submit the spending plan to Rotary International and get that approved so we can start actually handing out dollars. Your clock starts when that check is sent. 6 months after that, you'll need to give an interim report, and that happens all the way through completion. That final report Sean mentioned, has to be submitted within 2 months after your project is completed. And trust me, we'll remind you, we will in a friendly way, remind you that your reports are due. Okay, why did it go back? I'm having trouble with this. Okay, now we're going to go through and show you, well, first, I think, Sean, didn't we do the your slide first and then we went, okay. So we'll go, I'll turn it back over to Sean for a few common mistakes and then we'll go live.
Yeah, this is pretty quick and probably very self-evident because I kind of harped on some of this as I went along. But so we often see, we thought this year it'd be nice to share just one slide of some of the common issues or problems that we see with these grant applications to just kind of give you a heads up as to, okay, make sure this is right before you push submit. So from Katie's perspective, again, also, we're finding that sometimes there are incorrect signatures on the MOUs. So again, just a reminder of who the correct signatories are. And remember, it's helpful, I think, to remember, here's how I remember it anyway, that the Rotary year starts July 1st. So who is your president-elect beginning that year, July 1st year, and then who's the president going to be, and then who's the next president going to be, right? And so it's president-elect and president-elect-elect right now, right? But if a question came up in one of our other sessions, if your club doesn't know yet who the president-elect-elect is going to be, then the recommendation was made to have your secretary or your treasurer sign on behalf of that, whoever that future person's going to be, okay? And then in the application, many applications, for whatever reason, kind of fail to state what the Rotarians are going to do toward the project. How are they participating? How are you rolling up your sleeves and really getting in there and getting your hands dirty and like, what are you doing, right? So don't forget to show in your application what work the individual Rotarians are doing toward the completion of the project. I mean, these are really great projects, but then, how are the club members involved is really what you're trying to answer. And then oftentimes, as I mentioned, there's a failure to ensure that budget and financial information in the application is correct in balances. And that's really, obviously, as the final note here, it's not uploading all of the documents that are required for closure. Maybe you have receipts that are missing. In the application itself, there's a budget tab and a financial information tab, which Sandy's going to show you here. And there's what's really kind of the biggest trick, and I don't know why it trips people up, but there's the budget tab, and then there's the individual project report tab. And then within that tab, there is a financial information section. So those numbers need to jive in both sections, both tabs of the application. And Sandy will show this to you. So these are the common mistakes. And again, just make sure you kind of check those off so you have everything all lined up. Thank you.
Awesome. And don't feel bad if you make a mistake, because even 4 years into being on grant leadership, I just helped a club and I missed that the two sections were different. There's just a lot of moving parts. So, but no worries. Once that's called out, it's easy to correct. So I am going to stop sharing this PowerPoint right now. If anyone has questions, give me just a moment while I get us ready to log into the district grant module.
Yeah, while Sandy's doing that, I put it in the chat, but I wanted to give a shameless plug to our Public Image Committee, because we want to get photos and videos of your projects to the Public Image Committee, Tina Ingram's chair, and Cheryl Warren as our webmaster, so that we can get pictures of those projects shared on social media and on our webpage. On the new webpage, hopefully you've all been there. There's the banner at the top. We want to keep those pictures fresh and new, so we need project pictures from the great work you're doing in your community. Like that.
Perfect timing, huh? So this is exactly what Dale was just talking about. This is your district website. And so I wanted to start here. Once you log in, this is the home page. And in order to find where you'll input your grant application and your grant inquiry, you go under Foundation and the link to the grant materials and module. So before I go to the module, this grant management toolbox, this is where we have all of your materials, everything that we talked about today, and we'll send that link, we'll push it out to you. But that's where you will find that. Under that same Foundation link is where you'll go to the actual module where you'll submit grants. So this is the page that pops up right away. And this is when Dale mentioned an inquiry, so that very first bit of information that you're going to apply or you're going to input to tell us about your project, this is that page. So you name your project, make it something easy to identify your project, of course, the year, it's 23-24. And this description, this little box is where you'll describe the Rotary Club of Akron is going to prepare meals for Ronald McDonald House on a quarterly basis. And here's where you estimate your budget. That's all that's required under the inquiry, what we say by inquiry, and that's what's due on May 15th. That along with your MOUs signed. But it's that simple. It's just to let us know, it's a trigger to the grant committee that the Rotary Club of Akron is interested in pursuing a grant this year. So it's that part's that simple. Then when you want to actually submit, well, let's see. I think my club is qualified. Once your club is qualified, over here, My Club Grants is one of the links. And so I'm going to click on Submit a Grant Request. Where's the tabs? Okay, what am I doing wrong?
Sandy,
Oh,
try.
sorry, it's up top here.
Okay.
Submit a. I guess I'm not going to be able to show it because there's not one in. Let me go to a past one. Is that what you were going to tell me, Sean?
Yeah, or well, the grants module, if you go to the far left and hit bottom grants module, oh no, that's just under the help. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
I'll go to, I think it's because I didn't have an active grant in there yet. But so here, once you have done that initial inquiry, that page that I showed you, and you hit submit, then you'll be able to access the actual full application, and you hit submit a grant request up here in the upper left-hand corner. And that's when these tabs that Sean was talking about. So there are those initial details. This is from our project last year. Then the application, we're encouraging everyone to turn in their applications as early as possible, because that's where is all mine? That's where all of the information, mine's being slow. Sorry, it hasn't loaded yet. But that's where you'll put all of the details. And I'm going to go to a different one. Sorry that my computer's being so slow. I'll skip to the budget. So Sean mentioned you need to put a complete budget in. So you're going to be asked what expenses are you going to have? Now, our project last year was very simple because all of our $5,000 was going for equipment within this community room at the Children's Museum. But in some cases, like the K-9 unit that was just approved for one of our clubs, they had maybe a list of 10 different expenses that they were going to pay for to take care of this K-9 unit within their police department. So all of that needs to be added, and it needs to total and be to accurately reflect on what you've put in the details section over here. So if it says 5,000 here, it has to say 5,000 in both income and expense under the budget. And remember that your club is matching 50% and the district is matching 50%. And you need to show both of those so that your totals, if your budget is 3,000, it needs to be 3,000 both spots. Here's the documents section that Sean mentioned. Super easy. You can just click. It's not auto-populating for some reason. It's being very slow. But the same way that you would upload, like Dale mentioned, where you upload an attachment to an email, it's the exact same way. So you would, here's where you would put receipts, canceled checks, things like that. Project overview, this is at the end, or, well, actually it's not at the end. This is a summary of everything that you've input. This is where our grant committee goes to review what you've input. Here's another spot. This is where I made my mistake the other day. So you also have to make sure that your expected income and expense match down here, not only in the budget tab, but also in this, this project overview tab, which is input right here in your individual tab report, individual project report. This is where you would put your interim. I think the reason why it causes confusion is it doesn't look like you're not prompted to do an interim report. This is where you go to do your final report. If it's 6 months in and you're not, you're halfway through, you would just click inside of here. I'm just gonna do one. Okay, what's today? Today is the 25th. We started and anticipate finishing by May. We're ordering supplies and have our event scheduled for May 5th, 7th, whatever. I usually put my name because there's several of you sometimes. Sean mentioned that it helps if it's a different color. That helps Katie just identify that someone's added something. It's that easy, but your liaison would be happy to log in with you and help you do that. I'm not going to really that's a lie, so I'm going to delete that. But anyway, this is where the activity log, just ignore that. That's where you don't really add anything there. It's where all of the different things that have happened on your grant are logged.
So Sandy, would you
yes.
please go back to the individual project report where you were,
Yes.
and now scroll down. Do you see the financial report section here? This
Yes.
is again the summary of what it should say also on your budget tab. So just please make sure that those correspond. And then there was a question, I think it was from Mark, about how is this particular project considered hands-on? Well, I'll let Sandy explain.
Oh, our museum one?
Yes.
Okay, so the money is paying for tables and chairs in a community room in the Children's Museum. And the way that it's hands-on is our Rotarians are actually going in, when the tables are delivered, that we haven't done this one quite yet because we were finishing up last year's, but so we will be there when they're delivered. We will be setting them up. That's really secondary though to our hands-on part, which is we're actually going to be involved in 4 different events that will be held at the community center. So Rotarians will be working with the children's programming, and also because I know, you have to go through a lot of steps now when you work with children directly. We also, and we're working through our youth protection committee on that, but we're also doing the creation of kits. There's these kits that are used at every community, at every children's museum community event. There are packets that the children get that go to them and to their parents. And so we're also doing that. We're putting those together. So our youth protection committee kind of wanted to be able to have both hands-on and not hands-on. I shouldn't say hands-on, but direct involvement with with the children, and then something outside of that where we could do. We also like to do a couple different activities for people who can come during the day and do activities, and also maybe people that, look, I just want to be able to show up on my time and put together the packets, and it gives them a little bit more flexibility. And so that's what I mean by there are so many ways to have projects be able to be tailored to your Rotary group, especially if you're providing equipment. If you're installing playground equipment, okay, you're going to hire someone to install playground equipment. But there are ways that Rotarians can be actively involved. Maybe you're there doing the landscaping. Maybe you're there for community events, the safety program that Manaway was just approved for. They're providing supplies to the safety town, but they're also going to have Rotarians there at the event. Same with the K-9 unit. So you create activities for your Rotarians to be able to be hands-on. Sean, is there anything else with this application I should bring up?
I don't think so. I would just reiterate to everyone that, you know, I would go ahead and just preload as much information as you possibly can by the May due date, because it just really helps us start to get an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. And we can also help troubleshoot, right? So your liaison can take a look at what you have online, ask pertinent questions, get more detailed information. And then if there are any questions that need to be discussed with Sandy or Dale or Larry or anyone, you know, we can just be proactive and get that started. So I would just encourage you to go ahead and just put it all in there. If you know it, put it in there.
Great. That's great advice. And for those who have been around a while, and maybe this isn't your first rodeo, as they say, that's different. In the past, we really encouraged that inquiry, that first page with just the bones of your project. And then you could input the rest right before you were going to present, or sometimes even after you presented. And we found it's unnecessarily prolonging this project, this process. And so Sean's right. The more that you know, even if there's a big chunk missing, maybe you don't have your quotes back yet, that's okay. Everything that you do know, put it in that application, and it's just going to help not drag this process out. And also alert the committee early on if we see something that we think, you know what, they're going down a path that maybe, you know, how are they really going to get Rotary involvement with this? Or, oh gosh, they want to fund something that is ineligible. So the earlier that you get those in there, the better. Let me see. I'm not sure if we have a question in chat. Oh, you already got it. So any other questions that anyone has before we let you go?
So Tom has a question.
Say that again.
Tom just jumped in with a question. He says, I'm assuming the expenditures on the project cannot be made until the grant has been officially approved.
That is true. And that is they are a stickler with that one. You can inadvertently disqualify yourself. That's why I mentioned timing is so very important when you're talking with your community partners, or if your Rotary Club is developing its own project. Timing is so very important. You cannot start the projects or pay for anything until that check's been cut from district. That's a Rotary International requirement, actually.
Yeah, and that's also why we want to get those inquiries in by May 15th and get our spending plan in and be able to cut the checks to the clubs late in the summer, early in the fall.
Yeah, that's why we're pushing this to keep moving.
So-
Sean, did you get everything you need for qualifying who is here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, I have 8 names on the list who said they were going to be in attendance, and I'm not seeing them. So if you would just give me just a moment to throw these names out. And if I've missed you, please let me know that you're here, because it's very important to qualify your club. So I have Luann Wilkinson, Michael Valentino, Elena Hall, Mark Malin, Trish Eustace, Irvis Milani, Robert Fratino. Any of those folks on? No? Okay. All right. Well, then I have all of the rest of you. So thank you so much. And obviously thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience and with the tech difficulties and you know, renaming yourself for me so that I know who you are and I can give you credit and all of that. So thank you. I appreciate that time.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything else in chat. I don't see real hands or virtual hands. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to qualify. We hope you like the new format. We tried to streamline it for you and appreciate. It's going to be a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
projects.
Bye. Great job.